All right, today we're diving into something that's making waves on the global stage, China's new Global Governance Initiative. It's being presented as a whole new way to tackle the world's biggest challenges. So what exactly is it, and what could it mean for how countries work together? Let's break it down.
So the commentary we're looking at today frames everything around this one single massive question. The argument is that the systems we've relied on for decades are kind of sputtering out, and we're heading into some pretty turbulent times. So the real issue becomes, where do we go from here? And this is the exact problem that China's initiative says it's here to solve.
Okay, so before we jump into the solution, we first have to really get a handle on the problem, at least the problem as the source sees it. This first section lays out the diagnosis. Our global system is in a state of turmoil. What's so striking here is the contrast they paint. You had this post-World War II ideal, right? It was built on things like cooperation, international law, the authority of the UN. But the commentary argues that today, what we're actually seeing is a slide back towards a might makes right kind of power politics. And this has created what it calls a governance deficit, which is just a way of saying that our global problems are getting bigger and more complex, while our ability to solve them together is actually shrinking.
And that, of course, brings us right to Section 2. In response to this growing deficit, the commentary introduces China's big idea, the Global Governance Initiative. Let's dig into what it's all about.
So what is the Global Governance Initiative, or GGI? Well, as it's presented here, it's a new framework from China's leader, Xi Jinping. But it's positioned as something more than just an idea. The source actually calls it a tangible public good that China is offering the world, almost like a tool to help fix a broken system. At its heart, the whole philosophy boils down to three key ideas: consultation, joint contribution, and shared benefits. In other words, the vision is pretty straightforward. Everyone gets a seat at the table, everyone chips in to solve the problem, and everyone shares in the rewards. The goal is a much more collaborative and, inclusive global system.
Now, this is a really crucial point that the source emphasizes. This isn't a call for revolution. The quote makes it super clear. The stated goal is not to tear down the existing system. Think of things like the UN, but to reform it, to improve it from the inside out and make it, as they say, better suited for the times we're living in now.
All right, so we've got the big picture. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. Section 3 breaks down the 5 core principles that are supposed to be the absolute foundation of this whole initiative. So these 5 principles are really the engine of the GGI, and you can see how they're designed to build on each other. It all starts with step 1, sovereign equality, this core idea that every nation, big or small, gets an equal voice. That then logically leads to step 2, which is upholding one set of international laws that applies to everyone fairly. From there, according to this vision, you can have true multilateralism, real teamwork in step 3. Then, step 4 argues that this teamwork has to be people-centered, meaning it has to deliver real benefits to everyday people, not just be about politics. And finally, it all has to be action-oriented, turning all these words and promises into actual results. It's presented as a complete, logical chain for how to get to better governance. And this is where the rubber meets the road, right? From this perspective, these principles are meant to level the playing field. The goal is to push back against any one nation just going it alone, and to stop what the source calls the house rules of a few powerful countries from being forced on everybody else. It's a pretty direct response to that power politics idea we saw earlier. Okay, that brings us to our final section. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here, and see how this initiative is being presented as part of a whole new path for the world. The source is really careful to point out that the GGI doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's actually shown as the 4th pillar in a whole set of major Chinese global initiatives, right alongside others that are focused on development, security, and civilization. When you look at them all together, they're meant to represent this comprehensive vision for China's role in the world. And to show that these ideas aren't just theoretical, the document points to a real-world example, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO. It's held up as this successful model where these principles of cooperation are supposedly already working, providing what the source calls vivid testimony that this approach really can fly. And this really brings us to the final takeaway. The source frames this entire initiative as China stepping into a new role on the world stage. The closing argument is that in our chaotic world today, this is what great power responsibility really looks like, offering solutions that are meant for the common good. So, we're left with this final, massive question. The source we've walked through presents a really clear vision for reform, one that champions teamwork and shared benefits. The ultimate question it leaves us with is whether this new path will actually end up reshaping how our world is governed. That's all for this breakdown. Thanks for tuning in.